Welcome to Tracks in Time. Our year exploring the Concord Great Meadow with Cherrie Corey continues as summer begins winding down to fall.
There's a strong northeast wind blowing, which helps bring birds not only down from the north but blows them inland somewhat so that we get to see them here. It's probably the most bountiful year for acorns and apples that I can remember in the past decade. The focus of the walk today will be on foliage. That beauty combined with the sharp, cooler air and the bright, clear, sunny autumn days is something that really fills our spirit. But the color of the landscape is also a beautiful way to enter into learning about the place that you're in. And in Great Meadows, there are a number of major habitats that have a confluence together. And in the autumn especially, you can really pick out where one begins and the other ends based on color. Take a look over here over my head is red maple. Red maples like to grow in moist soil, and they'll even grow with their feet slightly wet. Thoreau talked about this in his journal, is the stained glass colors and quality of the autumn foliage. And what he was referring to, and he actually goes in the detail of how this happens, is the backlit leaves. When you're looking towards the sun and the sun comes through these colorful leaves, it makes them glow like stained glass. We meet this shrub every time we go walking through Great Meadows and the lowlands of Concord. This is silky dogwood. It is a dominant understory shrub, grows along hedgerows that are moist. It grows along trails, along roads, and also colors up beautifully in the leaves. The fruits dropped about a month and a half ago. But this is the plant that provides just about the only color to the landscape once winter comes. When the leaves drop, you're left with these beautiful red stems. So this plant brings a sort of unexpected joy through the more barren months of the year. We're stopping at one of many crabapple trees that are growing along the trails, and this one fools people. Most folks have never seen a small fruited yellow crabapple before. There are many cultivars of these, the small red, the small yellow. These crabapples are particularly attractive to cedar waxwings, which are these beautiful crested gray birds that are fruit lovers. And in Thoreau's day, the cedar waxwing was called the cherry bird. Another bright spot all the way through the autumn in the marshes and swamps in Concord is the winterberry. It's in the holly family. It's more familiar to people once its leaves drop, and nothing is left but the very dark stems covered with blazing red. In 1928, recognizing the value of this land for recreation, Samuel Hoare purchased 250 acres, and he built many of the dikes around these wetlands that we now use as trail beds. So another feature of this time of the fall is all the activity going on in the common milkweed plants. We have a healthy crop of milkweed beetles all over the dried out pods. There are a number of insects that visit the milkweed and feed on it. The most familiar is the monarch butterfly, and its caterpillar's main food source, in fact, only food source, is milkweed. And the orange and black coloring of all of the creatures that feed on milkweed is a warning, mainly to birds, that these critters are toxic because they've taken in the alkaloids of the milkweed plant into their system, and if something eats them, they get quite sick. So this is a very common wetland plant in Concord called beggar ticks. The tick refers to these seeds that have very sharp points on them that stick into the fur of animals or into your fleece jacket. So now we're out at the river, at the Concord River. This is the boat landing at the Refuge. And we're standing in the floodplain forest that is dominated by these enormous silver maple trees. The silver maples haven't colored up very much at this point. They never reach a high level of color like many of the other trees here. But behind us is a swatch of wine-colored leaf that is showing both in a beautiful reflection in the water and on the tree, and that is Virginia creeper. So Virginia creeper and poison ivy are the two vines with beautiful color that you'll see growing up the trees. What I love about this spot is that if you come here regularly through the seasons, it never looks the same. This is one of the greatest examples of reading the landscape in the fall. Here we're looking at red maples that are one of the very first trees to color up. And they are in a very wet, very protected depression below this glacial ridge of upland mixed oak and pine forest. So you see the oaks have no color in them yet. They don't come on for another couple of weeks, but the red maples are blazing away, and in about a week from now, those leaves will come down and it'll look like a gray haze. Every year, if it's a period of time before I come out here, I try to guess what it was that bent the leaves over. Now, what's completing the task is all this westerly wind blowing through so strongly. There could be anywhere from 70 to 100 of them here in the winter. And then between the process of this freezing over and the coyotes digging them out, they all get obliterated. This is glossy buckthorn, and it is now growing in almost every kind of habitat. One of the features about many of the invasive plants is they're much more cold tolerant. So they can photosynthesize and stay fresh longer into the fall. And they put their leaves out and their flowers out much earlier in the spring. This is what Thoreau called the Holt, and in his day, this was all wet meadow here, and the Holt was full of a grove of trees in this tongue that stuck up into the space that the river Oxbow created. So what we've got in here are cattails, but more notably river bulrush, which was a listed species for the state until very recently. But it looks like an invasive down here. There's so much of it. Many people don't know that what we see remaining in the fall on the cattails is the female flower and seed head of the plant. And it has magical properties, according to Thoreau and those of us who have played with it. The cattail disperses its seed relying on birds to peck or on other plants to poke at it until a small hole is created. And once that hole is created, it opens up space for all the seeds inside to spread out and push their way out, almost as if this seed head is foaming. And here they come. I'm making a very tiny scratch, and lots of seeds come out. And if you keep scratching away, look at them burst forth. They just explode out, many times larger than the opening I'm making. Thoreau has many references to playing with the cattail heads in his journal and in some of his essays. And he describes the warm feeling of the seeds filling his hand. He has all kinds of adjectives for this foaming quality. And by sometime in mid to late November, the entire marsh will look like it was flocked, almost like a Hallmark card, by these seeds letting go and catching on all of the barbs and branches and seed heads of the other plants and on the gossamer laid down by the spiders, until the entire marsh on a calm, still day in November will just be fuzzed over. So here we are in winter, finally. This is the first day that the impoundments have frozen over, and I've been waiting. And the ice comes it has its own evolution in the winter. Right now it's new ice, and it's dark and black and full of bubbles, and you're apt to find some really interesting patterns in it that almost look like paintings or etchings. The muskrat lodges that we've been looking at over the last couple of months now look like they're floating, over this sort of glossy surface. As soon as this ice gets firm enough, the coyotes will include the marsh as part of their daily round, and they actually visit those muskrat lodges every morning once winter really sets in, and excavate them for extra food. He's going straight for that muskrat lodge, which has water very close. Look how gingerly he's right on the edge of the ice. Don't fall in, buddy. Oh, he's doing something. Yeah, looks like he might be digging. Going away pretty fast too. See, he's not gone to the trail. Oh, he's staying on the ice. There he goes. It's quiet. Notice how quiet it is today. All the waterfowl have left because there's no place for them to sit except on the ice. On a warmer day, you might hear a rustling amongst these cattails, and that would be a muskrat moving about who's somehow gotten above the ice line and is crawling around. And it's also home to a myriad of small rodents that the coyote and the fisher and the mink and all of the various hawks that move through here depend upon for food in the winter. Oh yeah, this guy, I have a picture of him falling through the ice last night. Oh, careful, don't get too close to the edge. There's a heron standing on the ice right here. If you go really quietly, you might not scare him away. Yeah, it's like they only open water for him to fish in.
Right.
Coming in for a landing. If you tune in to the special qualities of the season, it comes alive in a very different way. The light is always low and angular and beautiful. And then we have the sort of the emptiness and openness where you can see in great distances because all of the foliage has come down, and I love that. Birds are probably the most prominent wildlife that's here. When we get up near the river, we're apt to see bluebirds almost every day doing their rounds. a few sparrows, tree sparrows, goldfinches might be out, of titmice and juncos. And just now, a bald eagle flew overhead and through the refuge, and they are our winter visitors as well. So the river is just starting to freeze up, and it's done a little freezing and thawing over the last couple of days, and you can see ice flows are starting to move downstream. You get all kinds of amazing combinations of bubbles and ripples and the lapping of the water and kind of flash freezing that goes on here that just creates a daily exhibition. And you get these worlds within the ice in the floodplain. There's a lodge straight across here by the tower, and there's one in the lower impoundment. So there's 3, and they would probably have a maximum of 3 family members per lodge. In the winter, they become particularly active in cutting down young trees. So you see they're working on this young tree here. They've cut it and then they're munching on it further down. We're here at the inlet channel, and you see 2 holes in the ice over there where the beaver have come out and gone into the water. And underneath the snow there are several scent mounds that they built last weekend. And they like to come up and then they squat on them and leave their castor oil on the mound. The silhouetting of the landscape is so beautiful. The colors and the qualities of sunsets and sunrises in the winter, and then the skeletons of the bare trees against the sky. Thoreau talks a lot about that. So we're out here in early February during my favorite week of the winter. Today has been a lovely, really quiet, windless snowfall that's gone from dawn probably now until dusk. The air is still and unusual for Great Meadows. I was going to say there's great silence, but a jet is taking off out of Hanscom Field. Such is the life in a refuge near an urban area. But for the most part today it's been completely quiet, except for the movements of wildlife and very few visitors around the refuge. At this time last week, all of this expanse was fully open water. Many of us wondered if we were going to have a winter. We finally did a couple of days ago have a significant snowfall that was more spectacular than many we've seen in years. It was thick and heavy, and it coated every inch of the ground and landscape to the tops of the trees. You know how the snow had formed over every little branch? They all turned furry looking. Yeah. Like as if the snow had become furry, and what it was hoarfrost starting to grow. So as we walk along in this, with this much white on the ground, a lot of signs of wildlife are going to show up more dramatically than they normally do. We should see tracks and scat. Generally, the movements of wildlife, the geese that are over there in the icy water, the other geese and the herons flying in and out, are made that much more dramatic by the snow falling all around them. Standing on the east-west trail that runs along the northern border of the refuge, right along the edge of the Concord River, and it faces south. So the sun comes in and warms this area before and longer than any other part of the refuge. So in warmer periods of the winter, the ground thaws out sooner, or at least warms up some. The vegetation warms. You have much more bird activity along here. The insects emerge, and there is more food for them along this stretch. This corner is where the best songbird activity is in the winter. It's facing south, so it's warm here. It's in the lee of the wind. This is the spot where the bluebirds hang out a lot. I saw them here a couple days ago. You also will find many more rodent track trails along this stretch too. And the coyotes come through here on a daily basis to feed in the marshes, and the fox also. And they will readily use the human foot trails to get from one place to another. At this time of the day, roughly between 3 and 4, I call it tea time for the geese, because the geese, very often if they're here already, they will up and leave and go over either to Hutchins Field or the river briefly and then come back for sunset. But if they're already downriver or across the way, they get up and come over here and settle in. And there's seems to be something about the golden hour before sunset that gets them restless. This beautiful river birch I've been watching grow for about the past 8 years. I have a photograph of it when it was about the size of a pencil. And it's been getting bigger and stronger and more flaky with age. What I found out about river birch, that river birch is not native to this town. It is native to the Merrimack River Valley. So I'm trying to suggest lots of tantalizing features of the winter landscape that will motivate people to put on their ice creepers or their snowshoes and put some warm packs in their mittens and button up and go out and explore the winter. I'm absolutely certain if everyone came out and saw the wonders of this season just 1 or 2 times, their whole feeling about this cold winter weather would change. I come here 2 or 3 times a week. I try to make myself go other places. I'm trying to document a lot of the other conservation areas in town. You know, when you're turning into Munson Road, there's a house across the street that's up on a hill. The hill that it's on is actually a very large rock outcrop, which is quite unusual for that part of Concord, because up to the point of those rocks is an area where Glacial Lake Concord filled in. And Revolutionary Ridge, that runs from about that point all the way to the center of town, was the height of the lake. When you get to this end of Great Meadows, you start seeing rock outcrops. And when you go north towards Carlisle, the same thing happens, but rocky woodlands in Concord are very rare. Just found the winter dining table of the gray squirrel here beside the trail. This hollowed out log has been all winter long, was filled with the debris of chewed on acorns. All of this cleared out area in here has been cleared by beaver. And the beaver lodge over there, we'll be able to see it from the channel down there. It looks as though the beavers have eaten all their winter food supply, or else the water's gone up and taken it away. Fox and owls and hawks are all mating now. And yeah, all around us, we can't see them. The river is full of carp, all the way, you know, down to the Merrimack and the Charles.
Yep. Sorry.
Are those carp by any chance?
Carp, a lot of carp.
Mostly.
Yeah, there's also brown bullhead, yellow perch, black crappies, other fun fish.
Most trees have bud scales, which are these hard coatings around the buds that protect them. And inside of that was the little red tips that you could see that are waiting to come out. If you want to know if a beaver lodge is active, the best time to look is in the fall, because if they're using it, they will put a cache of fresh cut branches just off the downstream side, so that if the river freezes over, they can still swim underneath and harvest food and bring it in the lodge. Right along the edge of the open water, there were these shard piles that were sparkling in the sun. It was really pretty.
Oh, and is that the muskrat?
It's a beaver.
Oh, that's a beaver.
Yeah, look at the size of his head.
Yeah.
I don't think they've got a good.
Oh, yeah, look at
get a little
him.
bit
He's
of a
a
view of
good
him.
size. Oh, he just dove. Wonderful.
Look at the, are those red wings?
Yes, they are.
Oh my God, look at that. Look, look, look. Wow. But they're on time. They often show up the third week in February on a rainy day. We don't really see them around here doing a lot until March, but they start coming back. In 1944, Samuel Hoare gave all of this land to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So, in 2019, we'll be celebrating the 75th anniversary of the Great Meadows National Wildlife Refuge.